and welcome to our panel today on gender and conflict, looking at women's perspectives and experiences. It's such a pleasure to be back this year at the Riga conference and to be moderating this very important panel. We're approaching the 24 years of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security at the end of this month. And it's really important that we look and reflect on where we've taken this agenda, but also how we make it fit for the future and how we really look at operationalizing and implementing this agenda in a meaningful and an impactful way that empowers women and also maximizes their contributions to how we handle conflict, war, and also peace and security. There's been a lot of discussions around preparedness and resilience and what a whole of society approach looks like. And part of that whole of society approach really needs to account for that 50% of the population. And so we need to do more. And I'm very happy to see that the Riga conference is highlighting this topic again this year. And I'm very pleased to welcome our distinguished speakers and panelists who are experts, champions, and also leaders on this topic. And I want to see them share their expertise on how war and conflict can impact women disproportionately, but also how women can meaningfully impact and influence the trajectory of how we approach conflict, diplomacy, and peace building. So with that, I'll introduce our panelists today. Beside me, I have Brigadier General Geraldine Janet George. She is the Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Liberia. I have Ariella Blader, the President of Women in International Security. I have with us Olena Suslova, the founder of Women's Information Consultative Center in Ukraine. And I have with us Ambassador Andreas Pilogovics, the Ambassador of Special Task of the Secretariat of the Candidate of Latvia to the UN Security Council.
Good afternoon.
So welcome all and thank you for being here with us today. So let's get right into it because we do have a short time frame today. So I'll start with you, Brigadier General Geraldine Janet George. You've served in your armed forces. You've served as the Deputy Chief of Staff. You've had almost 2 decades in the military. And I want to ask a little bit more and dig into how you've seen this perception of women in the armed forces evolve over your career and what the agenda looks like for your state.
Thank you. Like you said, I served almost 2 decades, if not over 2 decades, in the armed forces of Liberia. And when I got enlisted into the armed forces of Liberia, the issue of women was a serious thing to get females into the armed forces of Liberia. We came from a society where women was taught how to marry, take care of the home, and bear children. We are not allowed to be in politics. We are not allowed to wear uniforms. There are just things that it was strictly to women behavior, and there are things that it was male behavior. But after that civil crisis, when we had the new armed forces of Liberia, we decided to come on board to see how best we can change the system, that if a male is capable of doing something, a woman shouldn't be marginalized, that she should be able to do the same thing. And so I got enlisted into the armed forces of Liberia. And the training was tough. It was difficult because they were not willing to reduce the standard of the training because of females. So how have we been working along with females to be part of that institution and improve themselves? Before that enlistment starts within the armed forces of Liberia, we decided to have a special training just for females because we came to realize that when females pass through the process and go for training, they either fail they run, they push up, they sit up, they pulled up, because it was something that was new to our system, especially when it comes to females. So we decided to have a special section for all females who were interested in joining the armed forces of Liberia. The very first time we did such a thing, we only wanted to train 50 females just to have a certain number in that particular recruitment training. To our utmost surprise, we had 850 females who volunteered to go just for that training. And for the first time in the history of Liberia, out of that 850 females, 69 of them passed successfully in the recruitment training and were enlisted into the armed forces of Liberia that holds different positions within the armed forces of Liberia. And this is how we encourage the females. We go on university campus, we go on high school campus, we go on vocational school campus, and we talk to females to be part of the recruitment process and to be part of the security sector. Because it's difficult when you don't have female integrated into security sector. Take, for example, if we don't have a gender unit within the armed forces of Liberia or even within the Ministry of National Defense, and I have been harassed by a male, who do I complain to? To that male? Definitely it will be like I'm playing fun out of myself. So when you integrate females into the security sector, you find a positive result. Am I saying that with male we don't have positive results? We do have, but with female we have more positive results because they understand. Females are like mother. They understand the roles that mother play, and they understand what we go through. So that's how we help with the females to be integrated into the security sector.
It's great to see the work that's being done in your nation and that kind of outreach and active research into how we can better integrate women and making an environment that makes sense for them, especially in these recruitment processes that have already been sort of designed for and by men in the history. So it's great to see the work that's being done and how we can sort of advance that a little bit further.
Thank you.
And then Ariella, coming from a little bit more of a civil society background, also decades of experience in the women, peace, and security sector, and a lot of humanitarian work and work with Amnesty, different NGOs. You've been the permanent representative to the UN. You've done a lot of work in academia. How do you see this agenda right now and where it's going?
Well, thank you very much. It's very good to be here. So again, I am currently the president and CEO of Women in International Security, and I just first would like to thank the Latvian Transatlantic Organization, and in particular, I'd like to thank Sigita Struberga, who's here in her Leto hat, as well as the president of Women in International Security, which is the newest chapter in the Women in International Security family. And I'll use the acronym WISE, which is how we go WI. And a little bit about WISE before I answer your question. So we are founded in 1987, and we're the first and largest global organization dedicated to advancing women's leadership in the international peace and security framework and sector. And our goal is to promote gender equality as a key to achieving better security outcomes. Our network comprises of 15,000 supporters in over 60 countries across 6 continents, and 18 of those are European and across the Balkans. Today I wanted to talk about 3 general points, but I want to first thank the Brigadier General because she makes the point so excellent about women's important role within security in particular. But in making this case, those of you in the room, I believe, already know this inherently. But outside of this room and outside of the conference, it's not the first thing that people's mind go to. The first thing that people's mind go to is women as victims or survivors of conflict. And I wanted to make 3 points. The first being that women are disproportionately affected by conflict. And in my experience in the civil society, this is where the emphasis often begins. And this is where policymakers and where the UN until the Women, Peace, and Security agenda, and I know we'll be talking about the protection of civilian agenda, started to begin in 24 years ago with its agenda setting, looking at integrating women as a peace and security issue, but first and foremost from this lens. So in traditional warfare, we're talking about sexual violence, economic disruption, and a lack of essential services, including healthcare. In the more modern terms, and where the agenda I'm sure we're talking about will need to adapt is, of course, cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and worsening the already traditional vulnerabilities. Women already experiencing traditional and modern warfare tactics together are looking at then having social cohesion breakdown in traditional communities. So you have local economies or health systems breaking down. So you have a lot of the collapse of economies of which women are the social cohesion factor. So you have an entire breakdown of society and the systems leading to inherent experiences leading to fragile states. And we'll talk about this a little bit, but I'll keep my remarks brief. Second, and this is where I kind of make that point, gender inequality is a root cause and driver of conflict. And this is, I think, most important because this is where my organization makes the case that gender inequality is a national security or a security matter completely. Empowering women as acts of change, contributing their vital perspectives as peace builders, conflict prevention, and resilience actors is very important, as well as the key important factor that we all know as actors of security, policing, military, et cetera. But evidence is showing that women are very important actors across the triple nexus. We know the data that I think you all have heard about peace negotiations. They're increasing 30% in their involvement, equals 15 years later in duration. But our organization invests in the research and programs that show across the triple nexus where these are coming true. And finally, despite these challenges, women are not merely victims of conflict, they're also leaders and contributors to peace and security. So again, in hybrid and kinetic warfare, women are bringing unique skills and perspectives, bringing trust, providing critical intelligence in ways that male counterparts are not necessarily doing. I'd just like to point to, in addition to many national examples that I'm sure we'll talk about, NATO itself has had some wonderful successes, including the female engagement teams, where their individuals have connected with communities. We've seen this occur in Afghanistan and Iraq. Yet women are underrepresented in security forces, with only 13% of NATO personnel being women. Mm-hmm. So we have some room to maneuver and some things we need to do to move forward. And we can't overlook essential roles that women play. But I just want to briefly mention the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda, rooted in UN Security Council Resolution 1325, is crucial not only for gender equality, but for broader international peace and security. Now, we are all facing the complex security landscape from Russia's aggressive acts, illegal acts against Ukraine. But this affects, of course, broader international peace and stability. And as part of this, NATO has a critical role of advancing women, peace, and security. And many of you may be aware of the most recent 2024 NATO policy on women, peace, and security. I'd like to make a plug that the Special Representative on Women, Peace, and Security, Irina Fallon, founded Women in International Security's Italian chapter. So go wise. And it emphasizes the importance of integrating gender across NATO's core tasks, of course, deterrence, defense, crisis management, and cooperative security. And this is what we want to see. We want to see gender integrated across security themes, pillars, et cetera. Fundamentally, female personnel improve situational awareness, build local trust, enhance operational awareness, and reinforce women's participation in security operations. So this is crucial. So I would just leave us with the concept that gender equity is fundamental to conflict mitigation and global security. And it's up to all of us to have women leading at the table, and so that in the future, talking and having this discussion is not a side event, although this is wonderful, but that we are core to the conference and discussions itself.
Well, I think you've really kind of hit the nail on the head there, and that is the whole discussion that we're trying to move forward with the agenda, that women, peace, and security and gender equality is more than just a reflection of our very important values, but it's instrumental in the way that we operationalize our activities, and the way that we push forward security and peace, and the way that we maintain peace, especially as a root of so much conflict. And this is what we want to see: women's participation be meaningful, not just sort of a checkbox mark item, but that we actually integrate every single part of our society in an effective and efficient way that at the core of it brings us peace. and pushes forwards our values and rooted in democracy. And you've also discussed a little bit on cyber and hybrid, and I mean, that's been a big discussion of how the security environment has evolved. And Elena, your organization for the Women's Information Consultative Center has really changed its trajectory over the past years, and I think it's really been very on top of what the security environment looks like. You've reacted to the situation in 2014. You have worked much more with our defense industries and with the military and the armed forces of Ukraine. And now you're also looking a lot more at the digital space and how to make it safer for women. So what are your thoughts on how we approach this new security environment and women's involvement in that?
First of all, I would like to thank to all countries, all organizations, all individuals around the world, including host country, including our great friend Marta and Iluta Lasse personally, who continue to support our fight for freedom and democracy all these years. Ariella fortunately mentioned many things that I would like to mention, therefore I will just echo sometimes about what you said. And first of all, I would like to tell that really, women are not victims. We work with survivors of conflict-related sexual violence, and we call all around the world, we have to change the language of international documents, Geneva Conventions, and I hope all our UN brothers and sisters will continue to do it. Talking about your question. We have in Ukraine the combination of unconventional and conventional war. At the same time, conventional war is beyond of all conventions. It is a problem. And one of things that is very important for us, it is about early warning, about first signs, symbols of escalation, what will be. I am doing research about gender and hybrid threats since 2010. And unfortunately, I would like to tell that till now, it is not only underestimate of level of events, at the same time, underestimation of gender issue. At the same time, not for all, and I would like to cite, maybe you know about Joint Analysis and Lessons Learned Center of NATO, and I will cite it. Maybe also you know or not, NATO was being developed war for development agenda for the next 20 years. And it has 5 war for development initiatives. 2 of them, gender-related experience in Ukraine. And I'm informing about 2 of them, like cognitive superiority and layered resilience. What it is about? Layered resilience about multi-levels of resilience. In our situation, it is a very active cooperation of non-governmental organizations and security and defense sector structures with on gender issues. 2 years ago, we did provide research about it, and we found that around the world, actually, gender issues or women's issues considered only during peace missions to help in humanitarian assistance. It is like women like victims, women like vulnerable category. I think we have to change this wording. We have to change this language because it's not about the situation in terms of this war. By the way, talking about hybrid threats related to gender, one of them to tell about women during the war only about victims, survivors, participants, and also when we tell about vulnerability of women, it's not a vulnerability of us, it is vulnerability of the state, of structures that could not understand we are different, and if we are female soldiers, you, my dear state, should consider my anthropological body, my small size of shoes and other things. It is not my vulnerability. And I think we have to tell about how it could be considered. Talking about cognitive superiority. I think one of parts of our resilience in Ukraine is a cognitive superiority and considering gender equality. Why? Because we did not start to talk about it in 2014 or in 2022. Our organization, I founded it almost 30 years ago. And the first year we started to work with military institutions. 95 was not only the year of Beijing conference, it was the year when in Ukraine, first military institution invited female cadets. And it is important to understand that if we have society that has differentiation, the same should be in any area. What we did. We continue to work with all Russian-initiated and supported efforts. During this work, I would like to tell about 3 criteria that are very important for each country around the world to see about tendencies that could be threatening. First of all, is about anti-gender groups. I will tell now the key word, Istanbul Convention. And if we look, many countries faced this situation when Istanbul Convention ratification faced with resistance. When I remember I was in Lithuania, and when we met with MP members of parliament, and they started to tell, I found the language was the same what they use in Ukraine or around the world. It is very important, and we have a lot of validated facts about it. The second one, anti-abortion legislation. In Ukraine was been efforts to start it, never yet was been successful. However, it is one of attacks to bodies' rights, actually, not only to women's rights. And third one, now it is unfortunately very actual for our neighbor Georgia. It is about foreign agents law. Why I tell about gender component of foreign agent law? Because women are underrepresented in politics. We are underrepresented in politics, and we are much more active in civil society. And attack to civil society has more harder impact at women. We have a lot to do, and I hope we continue to do, and I'm very glad to see here my colleagues and my friends in Ukraine as well. Thank you.
We're also very happy to have Ukraine represented at the Riga conference every year, and to especially look at how many lessons we have to learn from how you've implemented and acted on gender. I mean, you have some of the most women in your military. I believe it's up to 15,000.
No.
Oh, 60, I think it's 15,000 on 68,000, about 15,000 on the front lines now, which is a significant difference.
About 10.
Yeah.
10, because it is a different dependent from the situation, yes, and these women are not only at supportive positions, they are at the battlefield mainstream professions as well.
Yeah, and it's become even more important now that we actually look at how we arm and engage with this woman, which is why I'm so glad to see that NATO's committed to a $7 million fund promising to purchase body armor and other essential equipment for women serving in the Ukrainian armed forces. And I hope that we can very quickly move this forward and get our people on the ground the equipment that they need. And Ambassador Plegovics, I know you're a bit short on time because you have other commitments, but you have been a very staunch supporter of gender equality in Latvia, and you've paid particular attention to empowering women and their engagement in the public and professional life. And I have to say, Latvia is doing exceptionally well. 33% of your cabinet of ministers, including your prime minister, are women, so congratulations. And even in your armed forces, 20% of personnel recruited were women, 30% of your state police are women. So how has Latvia gotten here, and what are the challenges that you still see in this agenda for Latvia?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this panel. And indeed, I think it's been a very rich discussion. I want to say maybe three most important things. It is that Latvia has been committed and will be committed to this agenda very strongly. The background of the country might be, maybe one of the reasons is that we have been a battleground of World War I and World War II. So too many men got decimated, so women had to be empowered. It came very inevitably, it came very naturally. The voting right was shared between all citizens of Latvia from 1918. It was very early, and as you might know, we have had the First Lady President in Central Eastern Europe. I think one of the goals of us all is to have also the first UN Secretary General elected, hopefully during the Liberian and Latvian common term on the Security Council during 2026-2027. I fully share that we are celebrating this 20th anniversary against very negative headwinds and very strong pushback from many areas and many forces. We don't have time to go into Myanmar and Afghanistan situations, but I think it's very important that we continue, no matter what, our aspirations, our vision, our joint action. Thanks God we could agree on the Pact for the Future in New York 3 weeks ago, and I want to thank particularly African group for being united and very strong against attempts by the Russian Federation to derail adoption of the document. So at least on paper we have good ambitious goals, and there is also special declaration for the future generations. So first time we are looking ahead. And it's important that women empowerment is part of our common vision. But of course, the challenges are there, and we have to continue joining forces together. I'm excited that we are meeting with General Geraldine Jones second time. Once we had an event in New York in 2021, and now Minister is here in Latvia, and we have particular triangular cooperation between Michigan National Guards, Liberia, Latvia, and this year Sierra Leone has joined. So I think these partnerships between armed forces are very important. This is a priority for us and also for Liberia if we get elected next June for the Security Council. And I agree with the vision of our expert from Ukraine that we have to work on representation, on dealing with the sexual gender violence, but also with the still enormous stereotypes and fundamental disinformation campaigns which we are facing. It's a Sisyphean work. We have to really mobilize all resources, our best expertise, and I think this angle of misinformation is particularly, I think, important, where we have accumulated some know-how and we try to share it with our friends cross-regionally. But the battle is quite serious. And I think like-minded countries have really worked together closely to advance this agenda, because on some issues we are minority within the General Assembly, within the international organizations. We have very strong leaders from Africa. We have some strong leaders from Latin America. But if we are talking about Committee on the Status of Women, on UN Women in general, underfunded agencies, a lot of pushbacks, headwinds, but this is absolutely what we have to do. And Latvia stands ready to advance this agenda across the UN.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your thoughts and also your time and all the work you've done on this agenda and your commitment to having women shape the way we approach conflict and security. And I really think we've just talked so much about disinformation. I think this is where, Ariel, your point that everything is so gendered becomes very clear, because we look at the war that Russia has built in Ukraine and how it is a gendered war, that those narratives have really shaped the way that we look at conflict and how we pit our values against each other. And we see this in the UN as well, when we get this type of pushback from particular nations. And I want to talk a little bit about leadership in this aspect, because we have brought that point up at several times in this conversation. And although we're seeing a lot more participation from women, they're still lacking at that leadership level and at those senior levels. Even in the Ukraine military, where we've seen such a large push for recruitment. I'm happy to see, Liberia, from your career and how you rose in the ranks, Brigadier General, that there was large considerations for leadership in women there. Do you think that that's something that is maintained? Do you think that's something that we need to push forward? Where do you see the challenges for women in leadership positions?
I think that's something we need to push forward. There are a lot of challenges that women are faced with. We are faced with challenge of each other. I see from where I come from, we mostly support male than support our female counterparts. If we go to elections today in our country, we have both women and male that goes to vote. And if you look at the population and they tell you that we have more women in the country than male, while we are male, win our elections, where we have more women, to show that we vote against ourselves. So the issue is the change of mind. For women, we need to change our mind and encourage and push each other than to bring each other down. We also have to hold government accountable. We have to hold government accountable for taking actions against women who wants to be in leadership role. Sometimes women go through a lot to be in leadership. They go through a lot of hardship. They go through a lot of shame and disgrace that make them to just draw back from pursuing their career or pursuing their goal. With this whole resolution 1325, government needs to we need to hold government accountable for what they said that they will do. Some government came out and said that we want 20% female, we want 30% female, we want 50% female. What are they doing? We need to take our action and make it tangible, not just saying it on paper, but to show what is being done to push women. And to the young ladies that are here, being in leadership is not like bread and butter. It's not like waking up in the morning where you got your parents, you are in school and they face your lunch pass. You don't really care whether you're going to struggle to get food or not. It's something you have to work towards. And don't let nothing to push you away from pushing your goals. If you want to be a president and you are determined that you can be a president, push towards it. Because you will get distracted by the wayside. You will get distracted by parents. You will get distracted by friends. You will get distracted by communities. And there is a difference between the Western world and we from Africa. Like I said in my opening statement, we from Africa, in order for me to become to where I am today, it was a huge fight with my parents. Because I grew up in a society where if you are in the military as a woman, you are a prostitute. You have failed in life, which means nothing good can come from other you. So you just join the military and all the male in that military will be your sex partner. That was the mentality we grew up with. So just knowing that, and one day I stand in front of my parents and like, I want to be a military personnel, just imagine. And in Africa, as long as you are with your parents, trust me, they can still whip you. So just imagine the kind of a slap I got. I mean physical slap. Are you stupid? What are you thinking about? Who do you think you are to join the military? You want to be a prostitute? You want to be this? Why will you leave the law school? There are so many things. But I was determined. I was determined. I didn't care what the world feel about me. I didn't care what people feel about me, but I was determined because I wasn't going with a bad intention. I was going with a change of mind. We had several crises. If you read our TRC report, the armed forces of Liberia was on the 7th that committed the most atrocity during our civil crisis, which means they killed innocent people, people were raped, they looted, a lot of things happened. And I watched the civil crisis. I didn't have the opportunity growing up to play as a child, to run around, to do things. When the civil crisis ended, I was in my 30s. When it started, I was a teen. But when it ended, I was in my 30s. So just imagine how many years of my life was wasted without me not going to school, without me doing anything but just running from place to place. That is the reason when I see what is happening in Ukraine, I feel the pain, and the world must act now. The world must act now. Because women go through a lot of difficulties just to get a position, just to be a director, just to be a section head, just to be somebody. We are not begging for a place to take charge. We just want a place on the table where our decision should be heard, where our decision should be made on behalf of other women. And that's why we are asking all government to give women a space on the table to make a decision for other women.
I have to say your experience, your determination, your commitment is exceptionally inspiring. And I know we're hearing more and more of these stories come from the public and from Ukraine as well, the stories of women taking up arms and defending their nation. And we can...
May I just
yes,
add
sorry.
on what the Minister just said? I absolutely agree that societies and the governments should do more. There are different methods and different schemes how to achieve more women empowerment. Some countries go with quotas. In Latvia, I think we are trying to really reverse this trend, and less ambassadors, for instance, women ambassadors are going to UN currently, last few years. So we are trying to reverse this trend by example. We have second time woman ambassador, PR, to New York. For the first time in history of Latvian armed forces, we have a military attaché lady, Colonel Ilze Žilde, who was on the panel with you, Madam Minister, last time. So I think this is very important that countries show the leadership and try to reverse this trend. And I fully agree about accountability. For us, for Latvia, this is certainly will be one of the main subjects on the Council, that crimes, war crimes, and of course crimes committed with the peacekeepers, against peacekeepers, they have to be investigated, and the crimes committed by Russian armed forces in Ukraine have to be dealt comprehensively on the level of the military, but also on the top level. Latvia has the most radical position. We think that the Troika, we need a special tribunal which will deal with those who have instigated and started this war.
Ambassador, thank you for your time, thank you for your comments, and thank you for Latvia's work on the topic. And with that, I'd also like to turn over to the audience and see what kind of questions we have for the panel today. And I really want everyone to dig into the diverse sort of perspectives that we have on the panel here. So in the front, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for the brilliant interventions. My name is Anna Tabitya. I'm a PhD student researching Russian hybrid and conflict-related sexual violence. And really, thank you so much for everything that you've done. And I would like to ask this question maybe more to the policymaker remaining on the panel, but also civil society probably has some input about how far can we go with implementing the Women, Peace and Security agenda without gendered budgeting? Should we think about binding budgeting targets? Because as you mentioned, everything is gendered, so why budgeting shouldn't be gendered. I just wanted to see if there are some lessons learned, some positive examples for drafting next generation national action plans for implementation of Resolution 1325. Thank you so much.
That is a very hard question, and I wish we had a finance minister here to target, but as a policymaker, why don't we start with you, Brigadier General? What are your thoughts?
I think government should be held accountable for the gender section. Like I said, we have a gender section within the Armed Forces of Liberia. We also have a gender section within the Ministry of National Defense, and that section is budgeted for. We added it on our budget line, so that government should also add the issue of budget for gender issues. Gender issues is not just women coming to work, or you have this number of women in government. It goes far beyond that. I gave you an example. During our recruitment process, when I got enlisted into the Army, there was no gender section, so we all went and we had to carry our own sanitary pad. But these are just common things. These are little things, but when you look at it, it's not just little, because it was not budgeted for. So when I got into the system, I was like, whenever we are conducting recruitment training, we must have sanitary pad, because you have women there. So I think government should be held accountable for budgeting for gender. We do have an action plan, and in that action plan, it tells us what to do and what to budget for. So if you have an action plan, that could be the help for you.
Well, I see that you have some thoughts as well. And I mean, Ukraine, we've also been talking a lot about the resource issues for women. So please.
Actually, my answer to your question, it is important to do steps. Even if it has no name gender budgeting, I would like to bring some examples. Uniform for female soldiers and military people. We did not name it gender budgeting. At the same time, we did analysis, we did advocacy, and when the decision was being done, it is budgeted. And it's the same about other things. We cooperate with, we have memorandum with many structures of security and defense sector, and they ask us about these things, about infrastructural objects. We do not tell gender budgeting, because gender budgeting, it is the process. And very often we forgot that to make this process successful, we have to research, we have to tell about needs, we have to see. And for me personally, doesn't matter what will be the name, if we target our goals, if we do it, because sometimes we tell about naming, not about doing. So, shortly.
Thank you, Neriel. I see that you were keen to jump in on this conversation as well, so please.
No, that's a perfect answer. I would just add that, again, the name is not important, but the answer quickly is, of course, no, you can't do it without gender budgeting. That's the perfect answer. But yes, you must proceed the best that you can. Mm-hmm. And institutionally, we do assessments, gender assessments. They previously were called scorecards. Obviously, we don't use that with countries or security cooperations, but we use 51 indicators to address what is being incorporated across the women, peace, and security agenda in particular countries, of which we score and then do trainings with specific military institutions. Why that's important is we take down what would be necessary in terms of the budgeting process, as well as a practical level. And so what that even means, I'll say something quite heretic. I don't even think there necessarily has to be a national action plan. That also can be very binding. Yeah. So when we are doing work with Caribbean nations who don't have a military force, or say a European country we partner with a lot like Liechtenstein, traditionally you would have to have a military institution. But what happens when the police has that function? You have to break out of the traditional mold and be very practical. So in the highest bar, yes, but we have to be able to be flexible and look at this. So institutionally, we have tools where you can break it down to indicators, but of course the answer would be, it would be ideal.
Thank you. Do we have anything else from the audience in the back there, please?
Hello, my name is Arturs. I study political science in the University of Latvia at the bachelor's level. The question is about gender as a cultural problem you could say. During an exchange program, I had a conversation with a gentleman from Nigeria, and I was absolutely shocked about the apparent problems that Nigeria has with this gender topic, about women in parliament and other areas. And my question is, how do different societies, different countries, whose problems are more or less apparent, deal with these issues? How do the tactics change, or countries that have more apparent issues need to use different tactics than those where the problems are not so apparent?
I mean, this is a great question. I think in gender, we also always talk about a culturally sensitive approach. So, Ariel, I'm going to turn this to you because you have the widest international network of women in security, and how you've kind of seen the different approaches from the different chapters in different nations.
Sure. First of all, I would say I appreciate the context that you're raising, but I would say, just to bring it more home, this isn't a problem which doesn't touch the European context. So specifically when looking at the context in which Poland and Hungary brings to the table this question of, and Slovakia, gender, and challenges these issues, or just looking at a swift change of government in Sweden, when challenging another even more caustic word such as feminist, one who introduced the feminist policy, feminist foreign policy agenda, how quickly it changes just over the nomenclature. So gender in its form is really a concept of a cultural concept, an issue that's a construct. So it by itself shouldn't be challenging, but it comes to it, these political contexts were attached to it. So I think the question is very much how it relates to maybe patterns of gender-based violence or intimate partner violence, but in another, say, continent. But really, if you look at it according to a government's agenda that quickly moves based upon the election or various things, you could ask that same question about here. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I would say just even looking at how quickly it shifts here, or how much specific the nomenclature is attached to just a moment's government's agenda, we could be just having that discourse right now, and it's no different from another continent. Does that make sense?
I would like to add a little bit to Ariela's words. I'm not sure you could read in Ukrainian. However, in our site of our organization, you could find one of booklets about it. And actually, the main idea of this booklet, no culture what is 100% is feminist, no culture what is 100% non-feminist. It is about structural violence. Structural violence changed all countries around the world. And it is important to see, because in our case, when we look at, stereotypes are very strong and awful weapon against men and women, girls and boys. At the same time, when we look, we could find 100 years ago in different cultures roots and identifications of different things that tell about equality. And it is important to find in each country. Because if we do not see, we continue these stereotypes in ourselves. And sometimes, really, we do not know where is the beginning, and we think, okay, we are so good developed country, and we do not think about stereotypes. It's not true. It is about early warning again.
I have one more follow-up, though. If you are looking for good arguments or ways of engaging in the conversation, then the data shows that gender equity and lower incidence of gender-based violence and intimate partner violence in society is a better predictor of state stability than democracy, economics, and other traditional indicators of stability that we're looking for. So there you can have the dialogue more on the levels of indicators of stability about the society.
Another question in the front, please.
I know that Elena works a lot with Women, Peace and Security national agenda on improvement it, also localizing it, also mobile brigade on criminal, like to document war crimes, sexualized war crimes. I would like to ask you, what do you see, just if you could share one of the challenges, one of the most challenges and one of the biggest successes that you would like to share. As well as I would like to ask Minister and also Ariella, what are your new plans or new ideas for some kind of urgent initiatives that you would like to do within this framework, Women, Peace and Security?
All right, Elena, should we start with you then?
Yes, thank you, Luta. I'm ready to tell about challenges, and maybe we will not enough time to do it. But to tell about main challenges now, first of all, I would like to tell that considering high level of dynamic of impact of war in Ukraine, every single day challenges are changing, and it is one of challenges because it is big challenge also for donors. Donors are not flexible. They plan it in advance, and when they bring something for the summer, already is winter. It is a big challenge, and it is not the joke. Big challenge for us to work, because I don't like, you could imagine in what conditions we continue to work. It is about missiles, about bombing, about this, about destruction, and it continued to be during 10 years. It is a big challenge for us, because sometimes it is for all. If you are not in good state, both emotional and physical, you can't help others. But we try. We have no time for ourselves. It is a big challenge. Despite we in our organization, we tell about it to everyone. Sometimes we tell what about ourselves. It is a big challenge. Big challenge for all of us. Position of global society, particularly of supporters. And sometimes we do not know, do they would like Ukraine could win, or they would like to see another end. It is one of reasons why we came to this conference. Thank you very much for the invitation, because it is very important for all of us. Very important for us is a motivation and inspiration. And we are very thankful to your support, because it is also part of our inspiration. Everything will be Ukraine. But where is our power? Our power in women and men. After the end, I will sing you about it, the song.
All right, and the second half of that question was really on initiatives and what kind of projects and things we want to see moving forward on WPS. Can I start with you, Brigadier General?
Some of the new ideas is to allow NGOs, women organizations from diverse backgrounds to be part of the security sector, to bring up their own ideas. These are the people that are in the field, that understand what the issues are, not only at the national level, but even at the local level. Like you and myself were discussing, we try to have organizations built within the Ministry of National Defense, along with the Ministry of Education and with the Gender Ministry, to see how best we can have a safe home for girls and women that have been abused in abusive home, children affected by drugs, because this is one of the issues that we are fighting with. 98% of our young people are all involved into drugs, how to get them off the street. And we don't see it like the gun being fired like in Ukraine, but the issue of drugs is another war that is fought silently, where we have a lot of young people involved into drugs. So we are working along with the Ministry of Education, along with the President's agenda for this new government, to see how best we can help in that area. And then, sorry, to the brother that asked the question from his friend from Nigeria, like I said, in Africa, in order for you to be somebody, you must stand strong. You must be able to stand and tell your parents that I don't want to do this. It's difficult to see it as disrespect, but the world is changing. The way I grew up is not how the world is like now. We live in a new century, and I doubted that even my 3-year-old kid can stand for me and tell me that she doesn't want to go to college at this time, and I tell her that you are lying, you must go to college, and she just started school. So you have to be bold to your parents. If you cannot be bold to your parents in Africa, you're not moving anywhere. You're not going anywhere. I grew up in a family where we are 8. 7 of my brothers and sisters did management, accounting, and I told my parents I won't do management and accounting. Did they whip me? Yes, I mean really whip. I got it, but I did criminal justice, and this is where I am today. So you just have to be straight with them. Like compared to you, you can tell your parents that you don't want to do that, and they will not ask you. At the age of 18, you find something to do, or job, even if it's a waitress job, you find it to do. In Africa, we are 30 years of age, 35, we still live with our parents, so our parents take most of the decisions for us, so we just have to be bold to them.
I mean, this is the thing about culture change. We've talked a lot about accountability, but it really does always start with each and every one of us as individuals. And I think you've made that very bold claim about how we can all empower each and every one of us, especially I'm seeing all the young women in this room. I hope that they take all your words to heart. Ariella, you had some thoughts on the different initiatives as well on how we can move forward the agenda.
So at Women in International Security, we have a year's worth of activities planned to culminate around the 25th anniversary of the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda. Just as 36 years ago, the organization was birthed out of helping civil society coalesce around this agenda. We want to be there to coalesce around and give people and women leaders a space to talk about this agenda. There are big issues that have occurred in the last 20 years. There needs to be an adaptability to the agenda to look at climate security, climate catastrophe, intersectionality. We need to really be thinking about disinformation and what in the US, government has talked about, technologically facilitated gender-based violence, and changing nature of warfare, particularly the future of peacekeeping, and also just the nature of the theater of war, where brute force will no longer be the way of the operationalization, and therefore the barriers that have been placed in front of women will be changed, and this gives an entirely new opportunity for women's leadership and adaptation to be put forward in such a strong way. We need to have then a new vision for civil society, so I want to thank both of you for talking about this in not the reductive way of the past, but really an engaging sort of new voice. And so Women in International Security invites everyone to be part of the network in your current organizational or as an independent person to join us, because this is how we want to make sure that everyone's voices are heard as part of the next 25 years of the agenda.
Ariella, thank you. And we are all out of time, but I really want to thank again the distinguished panelists we have today for sharing your expertise in such a diverse range of backgrounds, but also for all your work on this agenda and the work that you're continuing to make. I also want to thank our audience for their deep engagement on the topic, and I look forward to seeing a lot of you hopefully in the future in this space working on this. And hopefully one day we'll see this as in the main agenda and in the main event, because we can see how gender is so integrated in all these topics. But, well, thank you, and thank you again to the organizers for their support and all their work as well.